Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist and I own 54 units of real estate. So it's the holiday season. Wanted to mix it up and talk about how being frugal helped me invest. So thanks to being frugal, I was able to scale up to 54 units of real estate without any partners, without money from my parents, without doing private money, without doing syndication, and helped me build a $1 million plus stock portfolio. So being frugal has been the foundation of me building wealth in real estate, which has made me multi-millions in net worth, as well as invest into stocks, mostly index funds, 401k, IRA, which helped me build $1 million plus. So let's talk about some strategies that I did being frugal. So for me, I think the biggest leg up, I would say, of being frugal was after I graduated pharmacy school in 2013, I had $250,000 of student debt, believe it or not. So I think if you graduate as a pharmacist today, it's over $300,000. And I graduated with, I think the interest rate was around 7 to 8% at the time in 2013. And for context, the mortgage interest rates back then in 2013 were around 4%. So my interest rate for my student loans was 7 to 8%, I believe, because I think it was a federal grad plus loan. And remember, these loans, student loans, stay with you for the rest of your life. If you file for bankruptcy, it still stays with you. Your parents must co-sign it. So what I did was I graduated at 23 years old. So I did graduate, I think about 3 to 4 years earlier than most pharmacists because I did a accelerated 5-year program out of high school, which was a huge advantage because I could work 3 to 4 years sooner and make 6 figures 3 to 4 years sooner. So it was a lot of pressure to basically finish in 5 years because a lot of people do not finish in 5 years. A lot of people may get too stressed and they finish in 6 years. But if you take 6 years to graduate the pharmacy program, then not only are you paying another $30,000 in tuition, you have to pay more interest on your student debt, as well as you're not making pharmacist salary 1 year sooner. So to me, I felt the financial pressure to graduate, within that 5-year track. But after graduating so young, the other blessing is that throughout college, you're used to living with roommates. So at 23 years old, I was still used to living with roommates. And I remember I got my first job in a small city, King City in Central California. It's an hour south of Salinas. It's a really small town. I think I was the only Asian guy in that whole town. Super small community hospital. That's the job I got after I got fired from Walgreens. You guys can see my video about me getting fired from Walgreens. It's my most popular video, my most viral video. But that's the first hospital job that I got in the middle of nowhere to get experience. And I was making, I think, 55 bucks an hour on my first job, which is about 100 and I think 120K. And despite that, I was looking to rent a room in that area because I didn't know how long I was going to stay there. And I knew that I didn't mind living with roommates because it's cheaper. And on top of that, I didn't want to worry about utilities. And I knew that I probably just would go to work, go to the gym, go home, and then like watch sports, go to sleep, and then rinse and repeat on the weekends because I was only Monday through Friday. I would just go back home to the Bay Area to spend time with like my friends and family. So I never even looked at apartments. I just looked on like Craigslist at the time, maybe Facebook Marketplace. I'm not sure, but it was mostly Craigslist. And I would look for like a room for rent. So I remember the first place I got a room for rent was in like Greenfield. I forgot, some really small town, like California. And I could rent a room for like, I think it was like 400 bucks for a room. And keep in mind, like, um, I think apartments were probably like 900 bucks a month. It's a little cheaper area. But I got a room for 400 bucks, utilities included, internet included. And I just wanted like a nice clean room. Yeah, I didn't really cook as much back then. Um, so like what helped me save a lot of money was the fact that I was only spending 400 bucks a month just living in a room, despite making, over 6 figures. And I used that money to basically save up for a emergency fund because I never had an emergency fund my whole life while I was a student. So I think for me, it was just like getting up to like 10,000. I don't know why 10,000. I just thought that would be a good number. So I just saved up 10,000. And then at my first job, I didn't have a 401k, unfortunately, so I couldn't really max it out. So I just would max out my IRA, which I think was around, I forgot, 5, 6, or 7,000, whatever the amount was. So I maxed that out. And then I remember I was able to save a decent amount of money. And then I would make extra payments to my student loans. So whatever I could afford that month, I saved up my 10K in emergency fund. I basically maxed out my IRA, and I would paid extra to my student loans. And I would do it like not every month, but like a lump sum, maybe every 6 months or every year, right? So typically during the tax year or tax season, when I'd file my tax in April, I would allocate a lump sum to pay off my student loans. So that really helped me pay off my student debt in about 4 years. So I paid off 250K in about 4 years because I made extra principal payments. Whatever money I could save, I would lump sum it every 6 months. If I got a lump sum from Uncle Sam in April, which I usually did, I think I typically averaged about 5 to 10K in taxes back from Uncle Sam because I just claimed the fewest on my W-4. So whatever money I got, I would just throw it at my student loans. Another thing I did with my student loans, because I didn't work in the private sector, the nonprofit sector, so I didn't qualify for loan forgiveness. I always worked in like for-profit institutions, so I wasn't dependent on um, basically loan forgiveness. So for me, I just wanted to like pay it off as fast as possible. So I actually refinanced my student loans from a 7 to 8%, let's just call it 7.5%, down to I think less than 4%, because I knew I was wanting to pay this off aggressively because I at the time had the kind of the Dave Ramsey approach of no debt, right? That was my mindset when I graduated pharmacy school. So basically, I never like lifestyle inflated. And so I rented a room. I remember one person was living, it was a 3-bedroom house, and each person had a room. And then, we had the kitchen, the living room, the common area. And I would like watch sports in the living room. And then, when I wanted privacy, I just go to my room to watch, on my own TV. And I remember the landlord kicked us all out because he wanted to sell the property. And I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, and some person was living in the living room. I was living in one room, and someone was living in the master. And then, once again, like we would just stay there during the weekdays. And on the weekends, we would just go home. I think one was a nurse. She did 3/12s. So she just worked 3 days in a row, and then she was off 4 days. So, for me, once again, I just want a nice place, didn't want to save money, and I was used to living with roommates. So that was a huge leg up because I wasn't spending, I could have spent probably maybe, let's say, call it $1,000 a month on rent. I was maybe spending like, 400. So 60% discount, and the 600 was allocated towards, paying off student loans and investing. So that's how I kind of did starting off. And then I ended up getting a job in the Bay Area, closer to home. So I basically um, was able to live at home. So I was able to live in the house I grew up in Milpitas in the Bay Area. And I know in some cultures it's kind of frowned upon to like live at home, but in Asian American cultures, it's just very, very common to live at home. Like, I'll be honest, I'm 35 and I still know people that still live at home, right? um, so there's a healthy balance, I would say. But for me, when I got that job, I was 25 years old, and I think at the time I was making $70 an hour back in 2015. So I was probably like, what is that, like 150K? And I was just living at home. And what's nice about living at home is that I paid zero, right? I lived there for free. I'm fortunate enough where my parents are self-sufficient. I don't have to give them money every month. I know a lot of my classmates, they graduated and they had to help support their family because their parents maybe just worked, minimum wage jobs, or they weren't healthy enough to work. So I was very fortunate where my parents are very self-sufficient. They still are self-sufficient to this day. So I was basically able to just live at home for free. And when you live at home for free, you don't have to worry about cooking. You don't have to worry about cleaning. So that helps you kind of save money on food and, not eating out as much. But the way I kind of saw it was when I was living at home, I kind of had a soft budget in my mind. I just said that I want to spend $1,000 a month only. And that was just between, going out, whether I'd go out on dates, whether I would go out with my friends, whether I just wanted to buy stuff. Um, I remember back then I was like really addicted to buying stuff on slickdeals.net or .com. I used to check that every day. But like I just wanted to spend $1,000 a month, and it wasn't hard. Like if I spent over $1,000 a month that month, the next month I would just drop down and spend a little bit less. So it wasn't really like crazy tracked, but if you think about it, I was probably taking home, I don't even know, 7,000, 8,000 bucks a month, and I was only spending $1,000, right? So like if you think about that, that's a huge margin, right? I literally was saving like, let's just call it $6,000 a month, and which is a huge savings rate. And I just would allocate that money, once again, towards, I think at that time I could max out my 401k, and then I would max out my IRA. I would then pay off my student loans in lump sums. I had a larger emergency reserve. Like I think I was like maybe 30, 40K at that point. And I didn't lifestyle inflate, right? So I kept my living expense low, which helped me a lot. So once again, between living at renting a room and then just living at home for like 4 years, that helped me save a lot of money. That helped me pay off my student debt. And then once I did that, at 27 years old, that's when I moved out of my house and bought my first property. So I didn't rent at the time. I just went straight into my first house hack. And once again, this ties into my frugality. Like despite, I think at the time in 2017, I was probably making close to 200K. I bought a house 10% down, and I lived in a master bedroom. And once again, I was still used to living with roommates, right? So I would rent out the rooms. It would cover the cost of my mortgage, and once again, I would have more money. I think at the time, after I bought my first property, I wiped off my emergency fund. I would basically just rent out the rooms, build up my emergency fund for the next 3 to 6 months, and once I had a comfortable amount, which is like 30, 40, 50K, I would then just allocate more money towards investments. So I would, at that point, I would max out my 401k. I would max out my IRA. I would invest in my brokerage account through Vanguard. To basically, I think at one point I was investing like $4,000 a month into my Vanguard account, to dollar cost average it. I had my 3 fund portfolio, which I share a lot with you guys. It's 70% VTSEX, 25% international stock markets, and then 5% bonds. So that's how I basically was able to like build up my investments, to buy real estate, to invest in index funds, and to pay off my student debt, is from 23 up to probably about 30. I in all my 20s, I was renting a room, I was living at home, and I was renting out rooms in the house that I owned. And that was just kind of the college mentality. But now that I'm like 30 to 35, so I got my first apartment by myself when I moved to Southern California, and I was paying like $200 a month. I didn't get a super luxury condo. I mean, it was still pretty nice. I had a gym, I had a pool, I had a rec center, I had a rooftop kind of hangout spot. But once again, I didn't get the super nicest one. I was still very conscious in what I was renting. So that helped me, like I would say those 7 years of sacrifice helped me build my financial foundation. And obviously from 2013 till 2020, what do we have? We had a crazy bull run in the stock market. We had real estate skyrocket during that window. So that frugality helped lead me to like my financial nest egg that I built today. So very fortunate of that. And it's like these small micro decisions, they seem so small, but then they add up over time, right? So housing expense is going to be your basic expense. So I really want to control my housing expense. And I did that by literally just renting a room, staying at home, and then, renting out rooms once I own real estate. And I think like if you guys like follow Thatch, who's a bigger YouTuber than me, I think he said he owned 15 properties before he moved out of his parents' house. So if you're able to live with your parents or just rent a room, like that's the greatest way to save a lot of money, to pay off your student debt, to save for a down payment, and to invest into index funds and stocks. So I did. So that's my first big expense that I controlled. So the first big expense I controlled was my housing expense. The second one was my car expense. So I never had a car payment until like I had my Tesla, to be honest. My first car that I had, once again, I was fortunate that my parents bought for me, but the first car that I drove in high school was a a 90, was it a 93 Camry, Toyota Camry. It was a beige color. And I would drive that. And then I remember like it was having problems. So my dad bought me a Toyota Solara 2000. I think it was a two-door white one. I thought it was so cool, like in high school, to have a two-door Toyota Solara, which I drove that from like end of high school to end of pharmacy school. And then at the end of pharmacy school, as a graduation gift, my dad was like, well, the budget was around like 20,000. And I had two options. I could either get like a brand new Toyota Honda, or sorry, not a Honda Accord, which was what my sister got when she graduated, or I could get like a used uh, BMW or used Audi. And I went down the used Audi route, or sorry, not the used BMW route. So I got a 3-year-old used BMW for 20,000, and it had 30,000 miles on it. It was a two-door 328i M package. And once again, I thought it was super cool driving that car. But what's nice about buying a used luxury car, so if you want to buy a luxury car, I'm not saying stop, but if you buy like a car that's like 3 years old, it depreciates in value already. So I think the original price was like closer to 50,000, and I got my used one, 3 years old used, 30K miles, and it was 20K. So it already dropped in by 30K over 3 years. Now I felt like it was still new, and so I drove that car. Um, and it didn't have that many issues, to be honest. Like from 30K up to like 120K, I had no issues. But after 120K, that's when my car broke on the side of the freeway in 2023, and then that's when I fixed up the transmission. Cost me 4,000, which is more than the car's worth. Sold the car to somebody, got my money back, and then that's when I bought my Tesla Model Y. Right, so I literally drove that same car for about 10 years, and didn't really like lifestyle inflate. Obviously, I can afford a lot nicer of a car, a newer of a car, but just kept that same car. Didn't have a car payment. Um, so it's really the mindset I had was I didn't want to have a car payment, right? And even today, like one can argue that me buying that Tesla Model Y, it was funny. Like I got laid off from my pharmacist job. Check out my video. It's the second most popular video. For some reason, my most popular is me getting fired. My second most is me getting laid off. But I got laid off, and for one W-2 income year, I think it was my 2022 or 2021 tax refund or return, my income was less than 100 and I think 50K. So I qualified for that $7,500 federal tax credit for electric vehicles. So I think I bought my Tesla Model Y for I think 38K all in, and I got one free year of or 6 months of free supercharging. And at the time, I was commuting like 140 miles a day to Lancaster, so I was spending about $700 a month on gas, believe it or not, and my car payment was $700 a month. So in my mind, I just thought, well, instead of paying $700 to gas, that $700 goes to my car payment. But I knew that I would pay off that car once I got my tax refund from Uncle Sam um, in like April. So I just temporarily did like a zero down uh, loan for a car loan, and with the intent of paying it off in about like 4 months. Because at the time, I think when my car crapped out, I had, I think I just had bought, I forgot why. Like I just like had a lot of expenses. Like typically at the end of the year, my expenses are very high because I'm paying my property tax for my apartment complexes in Oklahoma. So I'm about to pay about $12,000 property tax. I think I had a major repair or something. But like end of the year, usually my expenses are high this year as well. So like I just remember I was just very cash poor at the time. Like when you own real estate, like when you own 54 units, like myself, like you just go through like I'm the definition of cash poor or asset rich cash poor. So like I think at the time I was just very low on cash. And like for me, like for context, like I do have about $500,000 in my brokerage account that's liquid. But then for some reason, like when I put money in my brokerage account, I view it as not liquid. But in reality, I could tap into it because for me, I don't want to interrupt the compounding. But if push came to shove in emergency, I could access my my index funds. So kind of back to my car. Sorry, I went on a side tangent. But basically, I didn't really inflate my car. Luckily I didn't have that many expenses on my car. But like, a car payment is the second biggest expense that you have. On top of this, I never had credit card debt, right? So every month I'd pay off my credit card bill, whatever that bill was, I'd pay it off every single month, and I would use like the Chase Reserve card back when it was new in 2013. Yeah, I'd get the travel bonus, and then I would basically use that to cover my travel because I would travel every 2 years. So the points would be enough to pay for around one flight to Japan and back, and then I would stay in a hotel when I traveled. And at the time, Airbnb used to be really cheap, and I would split it with like three or four of my guy friends, and it would save on the cost. I think it ended up with being like 30-40 bucks a night to split an Airbnb of like 3 to 4 people. And then like when you travel to like Asia, what's nice about traveling to Asia is like things are a lot cheaper, like food's cheaper. Hotels typically can be cheaper. Like just going to like a museum or doing activities cheaper versus if you like, in Europe or if you're like in United States, like just doing things are very expensive. So I actually haven't really traveled as much in like America. I'm waiting. Like when I have kids and it's hard to go on flights, maybe I'll travel more within the US. But like within the US, like just getting a hotel is like 150, 200 bucks a night. If you're going to a national park, it's 300 bucks a night. But if you travel to like literally like Asia, like Japan, like the average was 80 bucks a night. In Vietnam, average was 50 bucks a night. In China, it's probably about 50 bucks a night. So like there's ways to travel a lot cheaper. And what's kind of crazy is like to go to Hawaii. So for me, from California to Hawaii, it's a 5 hour flight. It's gonna cost me $500. So the flight's a little cheaper, but the hotel is like 300, 400 bucks a night. I could literally fly to like Japan or Asia. It's gonna be like 12 hour flight. It's gonna cost me 700 bucks to 800. So flight's a little more expensive, but the hotel is gonna be 80 bucks, 50 to 80 bucks a night. So for me, it's actually cheaper to go to like Asia than it is to go to Hawaii. So that's how I kind of, basically was able to be frugal as well as I use points. I use credit card points. I would credit card churn, get the bonus, use a bonus to pay for my flights, and then I would split the hotel, or I would do Airbnb, or I'd be in a more budget friendly hotel. So for me, when I travel, I'm not really in my hotel a lot. So for me, I really prioritize good location, and I prioritize an area where it's such a good location that I can walk everywhere, so that I don't have to like pay for a taxi. I don't have to go in the metro. I just can walk everywhere and do everything that I want. So for me, I really love travel, so I never want to compromise travel. And that's what I spend most of my money on, to be honest. So for me, spending money on experiences, spending money on going out to eat, spending money on travel was always my biggest expense. So yeah, that's how I kept my biggest three expenses in check, right? So number one, your living expense, lived at home, rented a room, and rented out my rooms. Number two expense was having no car payment. So I never really lifestyle inflated my car, and I bought a used car. Number three was, travel is obviously can be very expensive, but if you get your flights for free, if you travel to like a cheaper area like Southeast Asia or Asia, if you split your hotel when you travel, if you don't get like the 5-star hotel, it that can help keep your costs minimal. Because once again, when I travel, I'm rarely in the hotel, right? If I was traveling to a place where I want to be in the hotel, then I would get a nicer hotel. Um, so that's kind of it. And then the next travel was like, okay, material goods. So I went through a phase, like we all do. Like I was a typical Asian American where once a year, this is my childhood. I'm not sure if I ever told this story. Um, Once a year, my parents would take me to Payless Shoe Store. I don't think Payless Shoe Store is open to this day, and I would get one pair of shoes every year because when you're a kid, your feet grow, and I would make sure my shoe size was like a size bigger than what I'm used to because my foot had to grow into it, right? And I remember like at the end of the year, my shoe would be so beat up that like I'd have holes in the bottom of my shoes, and then I'd be excited. Oh, like right before school starts in August, I'd get a new pair of shoes. So because of that kind of frugal mindset that like my parents had, so that's why I probably picked it up myself because my parents are not spenders, they're savers because they came here with nothing as Vietnamese immigrants and had to scrape everything to provide for me and my sister, and not make us worry about money growing up. So very grateful and fortunate. for that. But like, I probably grew up in a place of lack where, kids, I see kids nowadays of like pharmacists, like, my God, they have like so many pairs of shoes. And fast forward to this day, I have too many pairs of shoes, or I have probably 50 pairs of shoes. So people call me a centipede because I must have like 50 pairs of feet, right? But anyways, like I went through a material phase where I just bought a lot of stuff and I never broke my budget. So like for me, I got very dopamine high buying like deals, like deal hunting. So like I remember like it'd be like Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I'm just talking about that because it's fresh. But like on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I just would buy like so many pairs of shoes. Like I remember one year, I think at Macy's, I would buy like dress shoes for work, and it'd be like I forgot, it's like 20, like maybe $30 a pair, and they're like pretty decent like dress shoes. And what I did was like I would buy like enough so that I could use the Macy's credit card, which would give me $100 off. So it ended up being like $20 a pair of shoes, and I bought like so much of those. So I just would wait for like sales, I'd wait for clearance, and I just would buy in bulk. So that's how I kind of always bought my clothes. I would buy my shoes and buy things that I needed, right? So fast forward to today, I have like a walk-in closet with my wife, and like ironically, most of the clothes is my clothes. So I have too much clothes now, so I'm really stopping buying stuff unless I really want to buy it. Um, so, like key concept is, buy things on sale, buy things on clearance. So let's say when you buy your first house, right? You have a lot of expenses. Like obviously buying furniture is expensive, but like fortunately my mom, she had a hookup where she would buy furniture direct from the wholesaler that would sell to like living spaces or living spaces. So when that wholesale, they would sell the furniture at a wholesale price to living spaces, and living space will upcharge the price of the furniture to make their money because they have to cover their overhead expense. They have a large facility, they have employees, so they upcharge. So I just bought direct, and that helped me save money, right, to furnish my house. Number two is that if you really do research, so like this table that I'm sitting on, it's crazy. This table that I'm sitting on, I remember I wanted a glass table to make my house look more open because it's a tighter space living in this townhouse. So I wanted a glass table, and I remember looking online at Bed Bath and Beyond, and they had this table that I liked, and it was like $1,000, I think. And then I just said, okay, let me look on Amazon. So I looked on Amazon and found the same exact table, and it was like $700, I think. So it was $300 cheaper. I was like, interesting. And then I looked on Temu. So Temu is kind of like a Chinese Amazon, and I looked at the same. I searched glass table, and I found the same exact glass table. It was literally $300. I was like, wait a second, like how does this make sense? So what I figured and what Bed Bath and Beyond does is that they buy it from Temu, and then they just or they have they I think they wholesale it. So basically you order on Bed Bath and Beyond for $1,000, and then Bed Bath and Beyond will just order it from Temu for 300, and they would profit $700 in difference just to ship it to you. So that's how they make money. So and that's what Amazon does too. A lot of times people sell stuff on Amazon. They optimize for like search engine optimization, SEO, but they're just really buying it from Temu. So if you're smart, you'll look at all three sources. You want to look on online, you want to look at Amazon, and you want to look on Temu to see what's the cheapest. It's literally the same table. So I got this table plus the seats for like I saved at least like half the cost compared to like Bed Bath and Beyond. And I thought Bed Bath Beyond was cheap because the glass tables that I was looking at, we're looking on Facebook Marketplace, which is a used place to buy glass tables or to buy glass furniture or any furniture. And I remember like all the used tables were like 1,000. So we saw the brand new table on Bed Bath Beyond for 1,000. We're like, oh, it's a good deal because it's brand new. I don't have to deal with like driving over. Maybe it's damaged. Maybe it's used. So I get something brand new. And basically, I was like, so I thought 1,000 was a good deal because it's brand new, shipped to my house. And then I looked on Amazon, cheaper. Temu was even cheaper. So you look at multiple sources. But from my experience, Temu has always been the cheapest way to find places. The same exact thing, right? So it's quite interesting that people just arbitrage things to make money by like wholesaling or drop shipping stuff. Like when I had an Amazon drop shipping store, that's all they did, right? Like you would advertise it on Amazon for like $30 and you'd hopefully buy it on Temu for $10 and then you'd hopefully make a profit between the margin. So basically, I bought a lot of my furniture on Temu or Amazon to help me save money. Um, for furniture, so for like a sofa, TV, washer, and dryer, um, I bought a lot of it on Costco. So if you're fortunate enough to have a Costco membership, I think it's only like $100 or a year. And if you buy gas on Costco, it already saves you that much money. But like Costco sells furniture, they sell appliances, but the only downside is you cannot see it in person, right? So you have to just look at it online and hopefully it works out. But what's nice about Costco is they have Costco Direct, and if you buy enough items, not only do you wait for a sale, it drops in price. And what's nice about Costco is they price match for 90 days. So let's just say I buy a sofa for $1,000. And if within 90 days, if it drops by $500, I just can show Costco my receipt and they'll give me the difference in cash, right? So they give you a 90-day price guarantee. So if it drops in price, you can buy knowing that in 90 days, the price will drop. So I bought online at Costco. I bought a sofa. I bought my TV. I bought my washer and dryer. And not only were all of it on sale, but I think um what was it? For every item I bought, because I bought from Costco direct from the warehouse, they gave me additional $100 off. So I saved another $300 on top of that. So I bought like an 80-inch TV for like $700. Pretty good TV. My washer and dryer was like discounted, and my sofa was discounted. So all I'm saying all this to say is that if you're really intentional in how you spend and you do a little bit of research in what you're buying, you could save a lot of money doing that. So I think like myself and my wife were very good at doing that. Um, so that's another kind of strategy that we did. Is just really wait for the right time to buy, and then be very cognizant in how you buy. Like, can you do coupon codes? Like, even can you do cash back through Rakuten? Like, I still do all this, right? Despite being worth like multi millions, because I know that why do I want to waste, even if it's like $10 towards like something when I could save that $10 and allocate it towards my financial freedom bucket, right? So that's the way I always view it. Like, if I am spending $10 more, I'm allocating $10 less towards my financial freedom, right? Less towards index funds, less towards paying off my properties, less towards maybe investing in myself. So that's the way I do it, and I still am doing it, right? So to kind of tie all this in is you have to be very intentional how you spend your money. Like, know what brings you value. Like for me, getting a new car doesn't bring me as much value. I mean, I do enjoy my Tesla Model Y, but like anything above a Tesla Model Y, it's not gonna make me any much happier. Like if I were to get an Audi R8, which is my dream car, or is it Audi R7? I would love that, but I would know the moment I scratch the curb or someone like vandalizes my car because I live in LA, or the Bay Area, like I'd be super stressed out. My insurance can be expensive, my repairs are expensive, right? So for me, just having the Tesla Model Y is good enough. If I can hopefully get full self-driving one day, if they drop the price from 8,000 to 4,000, I probably would buy it. Or if I want to use it, I just can sign up for the subscription. It's only $100 a month. If I'm planning on driving a lot, then at that point, I'd probably do it, and it's probably worth it for me to do it. So being very intentional in what brings you joy, what brings you value. So at this point, buying clothes doesn't make me happy. Buying shoes, buying watches, buying cars does absolutely nothing for me. Um, I'm trying to be more minimalistic because, as I live in this house for like, almost 2 years now, or a year and a half, we accumulate a lot of stuff. So actually, like at this point, I have too much stuff, too much clutter. It stresses me out. So I'm trying to have less stuff. But what gives me the most joy, the most fulfillment is being able to travel, being able to spend on experiences. So eating out, going to concerts, like more experiential for me. And like, don't get me wrong. Like, if I want to go to like a nice restaurant, if I want to like buy something nice, I will do it. It's just that it's not everyday thing, right? I see people, they just shop just to shop because maybe they're like trying to cover up for something. That's kind of my experience. Maybe they feel insecure. Maybe they just want to always buy something. Spenders will spend and savers will save. So, for me, that's kind of the mindset that I always had with that. So All this stuff sounds very small, right? Like, like when you eat out, you could eat out at a nice Michelin star restaurant. It's going to cost you 300 bucks a person, which I still do. Or you can eat out like yesterday, eat at a taco truck and it's like $3 a taco, get 4 tacos and you're good, right? So like, as I've kind of built more wealth, as I've increased my net worth, as I own more real estate, I realized that like I don't really need as much money to spend to live my life, to live a good life. And that's why like I always get like it's funny, I always get like a post vacation depression. And it's like hitting me like probably this past few days. Cause it's just like I can live such a good life that feels very free, independent, and freeing in like, let's say like Southeast Asia. And I can live off of like $50 a day, including hotel, including food and including activities. So in like, $50 a day is like, let's say call it 2,000 bucks a month. You can live very well, but obviously living in LA, living in the United States, it's a lot more expensive to live, but like, you don't need as much money to like live a good life. So like sometimes like why I get the post vacation depression, I was like, why am I grinding so much between my W-2? Why am I grinding so much between like, building this real estate portfolio? Why am I grinding so much doing all this and taking all the stress, right? Because, obviously owning real estate is very stressful, right? Um, which is why if you see a lot of my videos, I'm pivoting a lot towards paying off my properties, maybe selling some to pay off some if it makes sense, right? Allocating more towards index funds and brokerage accounts, and optimizing more for like less stress and peace. So, anyways, that's just kind of my rant about why being frugal helped me save money. Don't see as many questions today, but I'll start asking some questions. Yo, Andrew, thanks for hopping on again. Ryan, I did roommates throughout my 20s in the Marines between deployment and moves. I wish I had more cash to show for it, but whiskey costs money. Ryan, I like whiskey too. And then what I learned is if I go to a bar to get whiskey, I like Japanese whiskey, it's like 20 bucks a cup. Versus if I look over to my right, I have a bunch of whiskey that I have bought from probably Costco or Bevmo when it's on sale, and I drink at home. And I don't really drink that much, anyways. So I'm a cheap date, is what I call it. Right? I'm a cheap date. But yes, for me, living with roommates throughout all my 20s, living in a room, renting out a room, renting out my rooms, is probably the keyest decision I made to help me build my multi-million dollar net worth. Like if I were to chalk it up to one thing, it's probably that. If I'm being honest, that was the foundation and sacrifice I made for 7 years to do that. And I didn't feel like it was an inconvenience either because I was used to living with roommates in my 20s, and used to living at home. So now in my 30s, would I want to like live in a room? Probably not. Would I want to rent out my rooms? Probably not unless I really had to. So it's just a sacrifice you have to be willing to make. Tringo, you're new to your channel, you're a pharmacist. Welcome. Yes, my most popular videos are about me getting fired and laid off as a pharmacist, but my main content is real estate. So welcome. I've networked with a few pharmacists who invest in real estate as well. What I learned is I'm probably a little more aggressive than most pharmacists. Most pharmacists are very conservative. I'm a little more aggressive and maybe it bit me in the butt a little bit by being a little too aggressive versus going slow and steady. So, once again, tortoise in the hare, slow and steady wins the race. The hare burns out, gets tired, and gets stressed. That's me, right? So I'm trying to be more of a tortoise with that. And that's why I'm documenting my journey. So as I said, my risk tolerance, my stress tolerance, my speed is a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing and a curse for me. It's helped me build a multi-million dollars of net worth, but it created me a lot of stress too. So, just know yourself and then go at a pace that you're comfortable with. No need to rush. Mr. Sean, thanks for hopping on again. Yes, trying to do more live streams, and I'm mixing up the topics a little bit. Getting tired of talking about real estate, to be honest. So I'm going to mix it up and talk about my stocks, my mindset, frugality, maybe a little travel, because it's hard to talk about real estate every single day. One shot piece is king. Yes, it is. I agree. I'm optimizing. If I were to say my first 7 years, my first 6 years of investing in real estate was scale and leverage. The past, I would say 2 years is more focused on is focused on optimizing my portfolio, and I would say I'm on year 8 of 10. So 10 years suck investing in real estate. So I have 2 more years of suck. In my last 2 years of suck, I'm probably gonna be looking at how can I pay down my properties and which property should I sell, if any, right? So if I sell one, I can use one to pay one off. So the next 2 years, I'm not gonna buy, probably gonna be selling, and I want to pay off properties, right? So I hit my enough. If you guys want to know, I gross 45K a month in cash flow. But depending on the month, if I have a lot of repairs, I could be negative 10K 1 month. If I have a lot of plumbing issues, when you have 54 units, you have a lot of plumbing issues. Or if you pay property tax that month, or some months I can make 10K a month, right? So for me, if I can net cash flow about 15K a month with a paid off house, that's probably good enough for me, you know? So with that being said, I know I have margin to sell some properties in my portfolio if I want to, right? If I want to. So I could sell a property, and maybe, if I have 30K in gross rent, but my total expense is only 15K, including reserves, then I have 15K in positive cash flow. So I'm there, right? So what I learned as I built wealth is the true way to freedom isn't how much money you make, it's what your expense is. The lower your expense, the better. So what are our biggest expenses? Once again, my mortgage is my biggest expense. This house I'm sitting in, $5,500 a month, right? As long as I have this mortgage, I have to work. But if I pay off my mortgage in maybe, let's say 5 years or 10 years, then I become more financially free. That's why if you see my recent video, I want to refinance into a 20-year term with the same payment because I have a lower interest rate. So that can pay off my loan a lot faster. So that's why. One shot. Are you planning to build a family? And what lessons do you think you learned that your kids won't learn because their life will be different from yours? So yes, do having kids in the next, let's call it 5 years. I'm 35 years old. For me, it was kind of weird. At 30 years old, I knew that I would have kids probably in the next, get married, have kids. I just got married at 35, and then maybe kids in the next 5 years. And for me at 30, for some reason, why I said I felt like I had a gun to my head to buy a lot of real estate was because I knew that, like, I was going to get married in the next 5 years and maybe have kids in the next 5 years when I was 30. And I knew that once I had more obligations, once I had kids, a family, like I couldn't be as risk taking as I am today, right? Or the risk taking I took back when I was 30. So that's why I felt like I had such urgency to do it, right? Like that's why I did a bunch of stupid stuff and lost a bunch of money. I had 90 units at one point, had a mobile home park. I was under contract under an RV park. I was looking at buying self storage. I had an Amazon drop shipping store through Ryan Panetta, which lost money. I opened up my own pharmacy. I was looking at laundromats. I was looking at triple net. I was doing everything, shiny object syndrome, right? And, like I don't regret doing all that because I got it out of my system. So now, when I knew I was ready to have kids, I don't feel like I feel like I did everything I could, if that makes sense. Like I took all the shots on goal. I took all the swings and all the misses. I experienced it. And as I built more wealth, I just realized that simplicity is key, right? So I'm trying to live by that mantra: keep it simple, stupid, and simple scales, fancy fails. So I'm trying to really live by that mantra. Now I want to simplify my portfolio, less property managers, fewer properties in different areas, and maybe to pay off my property so that it's just easier, right? At this point, I'm not trying to build a legacy, not trying to be worth 100 million plus. Like I'm good enough with my current real estate. Like if I have 10 million in real estate, if those all paid off, my net worth would be 10 million. But probably gonna have to sell some real estate realistically if I want to be financially free faster. But that's what it is. What lessons do you think your kids wouldn't learn because their life would be different from yours? So, obviously my kids will have a better life than me, but I hope I don't spoil them because I think for me, going through the struggle helped me critically think a lot. So obviously they will have a good life, but I still want them to struggle a little bit. Like I see a lot of, millennials and Gen X, they spoil their kids. And I see Gen Zs, they don't know how to critical think. they don't know how to problem solve. All they know how to do is just go up to like a higher power, whether it's your parents or your boss, and ask them for help, right? So I want my kid to be able to critically think, and I hope I instilled that upon them, and then I hope that's why I'm doing my YouTube videos. They can watch my content and then learn from my mindset. So I hope to not. So I hope my kids will have a better life than I did, but I hope they can critically think. That's the key thing I want to instill upon them is how to critically think, how to problem solve, and how to have the right mindset to build wealth, right? Because obviously they're going to inherit a decent amount from me, more than I'm going to inherit. So I want them to be able to manage it and not be one of those stereotypical rich kids that does drugs and they're completely messed up in the mind, right? So that's not my goal. Courtney, so I have a hard stop here. Have an appointment, but Courtney, thanks for mixing things up. Thanks for giving me the idea. I am getting tired of talking real estate, so I'm trying to mix things up. So whatever topics you want me to talk about, fully transparent. Happy to talk about that topic. But once again, thanks for hopping on, everybody, on a Sunday morning. Waiting for the 49ers to play here. But if you want to join my school community on a free trial, I'm checking that out. I try to do Q&As, 3 times a month. If you want courses, coaching, I did drop the price of my courses. If you want to send me email, if you want to get a steadily landlord insurance quote or use my lender for investment properties, click all my link tree. It's all there. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe. Hope to see you in the next video. Hope to see you in the next live stream. Have a good weekend, everybody, and take it easy. Thank you so much. Peace.